On today's episode, we're going to take a look at the woman who should be president. We'd be in a lot better situation if she was president. I know Republicans are just complete idiots and will totally disagree with that. But her and Jon Stewart try to educate us a little bit on how the DNC made their decision and how things actually work, and on the state that we're in right now. Let's
Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be joining us later, and we'll be talking about all kinds of different things. And I'm assuming we can only conduct the conversation because the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is overseas, where he really seems to enjoy it much more than being here. I really think the problem that he has with America is we don't throw him enough parades with cultural music. I think if we just, no matter where he goes, have a red carpet at the ready and people playing the music of countries he's never actually been to, dressed in cultural garb, and then we just give him gifts. I think this is the way we can get through these next 3 years. Every day is Christmas in Malaysia. That's what we have to make America. The shit that they are giving it. I don't know who is running through the gift list there, but when the new Japanese prime minister gave him a gold golf ball, I was like, that's just nailed it. That was when they came up with that idea. They were tossing things around. What should we give him? How about a new cryptocurrency? Now he's already the billions and well, put his name on something here. Now, gold golf ball to combine. It's the Reese's peanut butter cup of gifts you could give
assumptions, meaning
Donald.
That we have assumed that someone who votes differently than us may have a different set of morals or values or principles that are important.
And what, because that to me is fascinating, because I think it's also, I agree with you, learning about that process for me in the book was wild. What parts of that process do you think Americans most either misunderstand or should understand, that helps people understand better how candidates are chosen, how candidates are managed, how candidates become elected?
To the American people, whether it is about a consideration of a candidate's strength or viability based on their ability to fundraise, who's going to support them, where is that support going to come from? I think there is a huge aspect of the modern campaign that is about profound and vast amounts of mis and disinformation. And how does a campaign...
And what, because that to me is fascinating, because I think it's also, I agree with you, learning about that process for me in the book was wild. What parts of that process do you think Americans most either misunderstand or should understand, that helps people understand better how candidates are chosen, how candidates are managed, how candidates become elected?
I think part of it is that there are a lot of variables that go into the whole process that are not obvious to the American people, whether it is about a consideration of a candidate's strength or viability based on their ability to fundraise, who's going to support them, where is that support going to come from? I think there is a huge aspect of the modern campaign that is about profound and vast amounts of mis and disinformation. And how does a campaign actually address that, especially if the process by doing it is at this point arcane, which is that we have not updated the process to be in the 21st century and understand how social media and technology can influence the mis and disinformation that has a huge impact on where voters start. And then you want to go through a process of talking with voters. I mean, John, part of I think what's wrong is this assumption in the language that talks about low information voters. Voters aren't low information. They are filled with information.
Too much information, voters?
Well, not too much information, but don't start with the assumption that you're working with a blank slate, right? People have information, and to the extent that they have been targeted with or are receiving mis and disinformation, the challenge is not just so-called educating the voter, but actually first being aware of whatever it is that they've been hearing, and then figuring out how you are going to have that conversation to challenge the assumptions that people are coming with. And I say that to everybody. I've been talking recently during the book tour about, the assumptions that we are making about the people who voted differently than us. And we should challenge some of those assumptions, meaning that we have assumed that someone who votes differently than us may have a different set of morals or values or principles that are important to them. But let's first step back and ask the question, are we working with the same information? Right?
Mhm.
And I purposely say information because fact is fact. 2 + 2 is 4. But are we working with the same information? Because I think we are finding in this environment that we aren't always working with the same information. And so the conclusion that we draw is not based on the same set of facts. And that's part of what is the challenge of this environment.
Does that then relate again?
You know what Kamala said there? That is the problem. What she just got through talking about is the problem. They have information. They have a lot of misinformation. And the bigger problem with them having the misinformation, it's like that's what they want. Some people you can get through to. Some people, all they want to do is watch Fox News and Newsmax, and God forbid, the other million horrible so-called news stations that we have, and listen to right-wing talk on the radio. They don't want to watch the regular news. They want to be misinformed. And maybe if you got them in a bar somewhere, or you got them away from the crowd, their crowd, you can get to them. But that's only going to be for a little while. Because most people just want to be comfortable. And 90% of the time, that person's life, they're going to be living around, who they're typically around. Like, somebody lives in the hills of Tennessee, it's going to be around conservatives most of the time. 90% of the time. That hour that you talk with him in that bar, he maybe comes to his senses a little bit. But then the other 90% of his life, he's around those conservatives in the hills of Tennessee. And he just wants to be comfortable. He just wants to get along. That is the problem that we have. The misinformation and people wanting to be misinformed. How do we get through to those people? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching.